Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a great lineup of panelists for us to discuss having difficult conversations. Before we get into that, I have a few housekeeping notes. So if you could mention the applications for OREA committees, including this one, YPN, are open right now. And the applications for the YPN awards will open this Friday. Deadline will be February 17th. Keep an eye on your email for the link to apply, or just check the website starting Friday. Also, please, if you're not a member of the Facebook group, join the Facebook group. All of the links should be in all of those emails. Sometimes I have to search YPN. It ends up in my promotional inbox, but I get a lot of value out of it, and I think everyone will as well. So let's start some introductions. First, we have Mersadies. You want to say a little something?
Hi, my name's Mersadies. I'm a realtor from Durham region. I work for Century 21 Leading Edge. However, I just recently moved up to Apsley in the middle of nowhere, which is fantastic. But yeah, that's me. I've been doing this for about 10 years now too, and this is my second year on this committee.
Excellent, excellent. Ken.
Good morning, everyone. I am Ken. I've been a broker in real estate for the last, let's just say 12 years. I don't know how long I've been doing it, but I've been making it up along the way, and I'm hoping to help everyone have those difficult conversations.
That's great. And Kyle.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. It's wonderful to be joined by a lovely team of panelists, and thank you again to OREA for hosting this event. I'm based here in Toronto. I'm a realtor with Harvey, Kalles Real Estate, specifically Adam Weiner and Associates. So it's great to share some insight today and add some value.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. So my name is Matt Richling. I'll help everyone host today. Obviously, we're very sad Marissa's not here, our fearless leader, but let's get things started. So my first question for the group, which is hiding on me here, is what are the most difficult conversations that you've had so far with clients? Who wants to lead off? Mersadies, do you want to go?
There's the unmute button. Sorry about that. Yeah, sure. So one of the most complex, awful, terrible conversations I've had to have basically in this market is explaining that it's not the same as it was maybe 6 months ago to a year ago. So that's one of the really fun ones to have with your clients right now.
Can you go a little bit deeper into that? Like, just explain,
Yeah.
how difficult was it? Like, tell us a little bit more about it.
It's awful. It's terrible. So we are seeing a lot of clients that are coming to us saying, hey, my house is worth this amount of money, let's say $1.5 million. We saw the prices in January, we saw the prices in December of last year, and now we want that same amount of money. So having these conversations where we're saying, you know what, actually, you know what, it's maybe worth $1 million at this point, it's challenging. And yeah, we've had to have that conversation repeatedly. So things that we've done to try to help this situation is when we initially meet, try to manage the client's expectations, the seller's expectations with these prices.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so we're going to get into some suggestions on how to beat this stuff in a second here. So I want to hear these horrible conversations, that are the difficult ones that we've had to have. So Ken, what's a difficult conversation that you've had to have maybe recently or in general?
So I haven't sold real estate in a while, but I've been in the industry for a while, and I was a manager for about 100 agents, give or take, for a long period of time. And I've had to walk a lot of my agents at the time, deal with a lot of difficult conversations, everything from a declining market, like Mersadies mentioned, but also things like having to really go into a price change, letting clients know that their property doesn't look great. There's always a fun conversation to have. Having a situation where you need to fire clients when clients are asking you to do something either unethical or just knowing that you are not going to vibe well, like not being able to work with a client because they are frustrated with you, or they think they know more than you, which is always a fun conversation. Some situations where you are owed money, which is always another conversation. Money is always a great conversation to have with clients. And that's sarcasm. It's not a good time being a manager, also being on the other end where I had to deal with other agents who owed money, which is always a fun conversation. And, we've all kind of seen this in the last 2 years of, telling your buyers that they haven't won a property that they've really wanted and have lost out multiple times, which, a lot of us have gotten used to in the last 2 years. So I think a lot of us have the thicker skin and don't realize that actually applies to this market as well. The thicker skin that you built in the last 2 years of saying, hey, sorry, you didn't win this one, but let's keep moving, having people kind of keep going. And despite the fact that they have lost all wind in their sails. So these are a few of the conversations that I've had in the last, little bit, which have always been very difficult. And having conversations with people in a situation where it's very emotional is something that we have to kind of learn, and we have to actually gain the experience from. We have to go through it. We can't avoid it. And so, we're going to go through a lot of those conversations. But yeah, these were some of the ones that popped out in my head.
That's perfect. And Kyle, how about yourself? What are some of the difficult conversations that you've had to have?
I think adding on to what Mersadies and Ken have said earlier as well, yesterday we sat down with the president of our company, Michael Kalles, and he said, being an agent today is extremely different than what it was if you think 10 months ago or even a year ago, where all you had to do was put a for sale sign at the end of someone's lawn and you would generate between 50 and 100 showings and 12 offers on that property. Now it requires a very difficult and sort of expertise, working knowledge of pricing a property specifically for that market, which by the way is a difficult thing to do, as Mersadies had touched on earlier. You need to go into that meeting backing it up with data and stats and saying this is what's actually sold either on your street, in your area, for the lot size and the condition of your home, or if it's a condo, here are previous sales that are equal in parts to your property. And I think sometimes what we're also doing, we have a bunch of listings as a team that are coming to market this week. A lot of them are getting prepped right now in terms of being staged and sort of neutralizing a palette on a lot of these homes to get it ready for market. So a lot of buyers will be appealed to it in a way that it reaches a wider audience. So these are sort of, again, touchy conversations with sellers, because oftentimes whenever you go into a property, they're very attached to things. They're very attached to, I need the highest and best price as possible that I can get. Every one of us on this call understands that. We've all been through that. And the second thing is, when you think about sometimes going into a property and a seller's home, they get so attached to certain elements within that property, especially decor items, that it's hard for them to move past that and sort of bring in a stager and bring in painters or a handyman to, again, bring it up to a neutral palette for market.
This is perfect, guys. I'm really enjoying this. So for everyone who's watching, please take a moment, follow these three on Instagram, take a screenshot, post that you're learning, tag them in it. They're volunteering their time to be here today. So it's a good little give back. And it shows clients that you're learning something. So let's pop back over to Mersadies. How do you avoid procrastinating when you need to have these difficult conversations? Because sometimes my mind gets rolling and I don't really want to have that difficult conversation. How do you get over that hump, or how do you kind of get to it?
It's hard for me too. It's incredibly hard. Generally what I'll do is I'll sit for a little bit of time, maybe an hour, and just regroup, think about exactly what I want to say to these clients, make sure that I have all of my information ready in front of me, do the research, take the time, and then go to the clients and speak honestly. And it usually goes a lot easier than what you're building it up to. So take the time, do the research, be confident in it, and then proceed talking to client. Sometimes wine helps.
Yeah, as long as it's not about during paperwork, right?
Yeah. Of course.
Ken?
So what I usually recommend is don't wait for the difficult conversation, plan ahead and have meetings on a regular basis, especially in the market like this. I've mentioned this before in other masterminds, especially in a market like this, you don't know when you're going to need to do something like a price change, like a cancellation and relist. So you should have a regular standing meeting with your sellers on a weekly basis, just to tell them what's going on, right? Keep them informed. If you have that planned ahead, they're not dreading the, hey, we need to talk, because no one likes that conversation in any aspect of life. Hey, we need to sit down and talk. We all kind of dread that. The moment we say it, we have a pit in our stomachs. We know something's going to go wrong or something bad is going to happen. And so creating that conversation, that environment already is setting the conversation up to be negative. And so if you have a regular process of, okay, every Friday, I'm going to call you and we're going to have a 5-minute conversation about, hey, these are how many showings are going on. This is the feedback I'm getting. It becomes a situation where in 3 weeks, when the market has not gotten where you want it to be and the property hasn't gotten any offers or that much interest, you can then have that conversation and they're not dreading, oh, hold on, this is something you haven't spoken to me in 3 weeks and all of a sudden now you're calling me. There's a problem. The other part about it is if you keep telling them week after week that the showings have declined, then they're not surprised with there's no showings. We need to make a change. So that's usually how I kind of set that up. And also, prepping yourself, like Mercedes says, just rip the Band-Aid off, right? Don't build yourself up. Don't go through all the scenarios in your mind, because most likely it will be the worst. Also, have confidence in yourself. Remember, you are the expert in this situation. They've come to you. You're the professional. You've seen much more than they have in real estate, most likely. Even if you're brand new, you've already have had the conversations, a very unbiased and unsales conversation with a large amount of realtors. If you haven't done so, please do so. Reach out to your colleagues and have the conversation of what's going on in the market. By having that information already, you have a better understanding of what's going on in the market. And so, you're less emotional. Don't bring emotion into it, but understand the emotion that's going into it. Remember, if everyone is, their home is personal. And so as much as we are used to saying things like property, it's their home. And so we get that, we have to do that, and we have to change the conversation with them in that situation, but understand that it is going to be a difficult conversation, and just rip the Band-Aid off instead of saying, okay, well, pushing it off. And that's the other thing about it. Don't procrastinate by pushing your own meetings off. If you have a scheduled meeting on Friday afternoons about what's going on, don't change it, because if you do change it, all of a sudden it's been 3 weeks, you haven't spoken to them, and then now you're having the conversation. Yeah, you're supposed to have it. It's a little bit of a softer blow, but it makes things, they start to have, clients start thinking about the worst things. And then all of a sudden, they're in the situation where they've gone to the worst case scenario. No one has seen my property is garbage, and I'm not going to get any money out of it. Well, no, you bought it 15 years ago. You're probably going to make money off of it, but it's not going to be what you saw 10 months ago. If you leave that conversation on for too long, or if you let them speak to themselves in their head for longer than they should, they're going to start creating scenarios that are worse for them. And they're also going to start having conversations with people who are not professionals, their friends, their family, who have sold their property 10 months ago, and say, oh, you should have sold your property for much more, or you should list your property for much more. Your realtor doesn't know what they're talking about. Don't let them have that conversation with other people. Have the meeting with them on a regular basis.
I like that. I really like that. So Kyle, hard to follow up with that, but so run me through how you avoid procrastinating when you have to have those difficult conversations. Some tips. Give me some tips.
I think that there's so much uncertainty in the market today, and there's just a wealth of information that's out there. for clients to dissect on what's good information and what's sort of bad information or just abundant information that they keep on seeing regurgitated by so many agents, realtors, and brokerages. The easiest solution to this is to simply just touch base with them. And I think what people don't necessarily need right now is reassurance that everything's going to be okay in this market. I think what we as advisors and agents and brokers, and Ken's a managing director, I think what we need to do is present solutions to them. So I know that that's a stray from how do you get away from procrastination. Again, the simplistic answer of it is simply just stay in touch with them. We do one call a day. If you look at our team calendars, you'll see we know exactly who to call each and every single day, hour by hour, minute by minute, to just simply follow up and touch base. And it's a simple call of, hey, I just wanted to follow up with you. Is there anything that I can do to help you at this point in time right now? And that's really it. So it's planning, executing, and more importantly, providing a solution.
I just want to highlight that part. I mean, remember, we are in the age of the internet, right? So we have access to everything. The reason why they choose a trusted realtor, the reason why they're reaching out to you and having the conversation with you is because there's too much information. We don't know how to deal with things. We need the advice of, well, what we need to do, because one place says this and the other place says the contradicting advice. They're both not necessarily wrong, but I don't know how to deal with it, right? And so your job is to really give that advice, that guidance in this situation. And so they are looking for your hand-holding, right? And so definitely reach out, and Kyle said it, like, have the communication. One of the things that we are really, really good at and not really good at is negotiations, and we're really good at negotiating ourselves to not do the hard things, right? And so we tell ourselves, we can hold off, we can do this, and all of a sudden, it's been 6 weeks, it's been 8 days that you haven't spoken to a client, and they're sitting there brewing in a situation where they can't, they don't know what's going on. And for us, it may be different because you may have multiple listings, and so you don't know you don't live in it. They may have left their home for 7 days, so that they can let people come in, or they have to prolong their kids' sleep time because their showings going on. So this disrupts their lives, and this is something that there's always constantly on top of their in their head. And so making sure that you have that communication of what's going on, give them the proper advice. But yes, just to highlight what Kyle said, it's just the communication is key in making sure that your client doesn't go down this dark rabbit hole of everything sucks.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. So Kyle, let's stay with you for a little bit here. What are some ways that you communicate your expectations or the expectations ahead of working with sellers?
I think for us, it's always data driven, right? So we're always going into a meeting and we really believe that, hey, go in prepared. And it's our job to sort of, yes, in a way, ask a client in a sort of consultant-based background and say, hey, what can I do for you? What are your expectations in terms of price, in terms of a closing date, in terms of everything? What would you like to do and how can I make your life better? The second part of that is really about going in with again, sales and sort of history and knowing what it is that can help them. And if you can display that in front of them, it makes your job so much easier. So if I go in and I simply just wing it and I don't go in prepared, how difficult of that is a conversation with the client, specifically a seller, versus if you go in prepared, knowing the market, knowing the knowledge, knowing the evidence, and that way it helps you so much more in that meeting with the seller.
It's very important. Yeah, that's good. That's very good. Mercedes, some ways that you communicate expectations ahead of working with sellers?
Sorry, that mute button, I keep losing it. Well, basically what the other panelists have said is just research it, know your stuff, and go in confidently. It is what it is. One of the things, another fun conversation we've had recently is I actually have a client right now that is very resistant to changing their home, or maybe we should change the orange wall to something more neutral. Maybe we should add a bit of staging here and there. So one of the conversations that we've had recently is basically, your sense of style is fantastic. I love your sense of style. However, your sense of style may not be what 70% of the public likes. We want to appeal to the masses. Someone else is going to walk into that home and absolutely love it. However, we're not going to find that one someone. We want to find multiple someones. We want to find multiple people that will love this type of home. So yeah, you just gotta, I don't know how else to explain it, but just go in and state your facts.
That's good. Ken, how do you communicate expectations ahead of time? I know you've touched on it a little bit, but do you want to dive, let's walk away with some tips here. Let's give some specific tips.
One of the things that I always suggest is having the conversation of time or money. Because especially in this market, you're going to have, your clients are most likely going to need to know which one is most important to them, right? Time or money. And I get it. Everyone wants both. Everyone wants to sell their property in the shortest amount of time for the most amount of money. That's essentially our job, but it's not always possible, right? You're not going to, if you want to list your property at 20% what the last property sold for, in the last 30 days, then you're going to have to be on the market for a little bit longer, or you have to prep for that. So which one is it? Or do you need to sell immediately because they just bought a property and they need to know that the closing is going to happen? What's causing them to stay up at night, right? Is the money that they need important, or is it the sleep? Is it the time in which they need to close important? These are the conversations you need to start off with, because they're not looking at that. You put yourself in that situation. You're not looking as a seller on what they need, depending on the personality. But a lot of people are saying, okay, the stresses of selling, they have to sell their house. If they bought a property, what is going on? And you may not necessarily have to go out and ask that question directly, but pay attention to what they're saying, right? We just bought a property. If you help them buy the property, good job. If you didn't help them buy the property and you're helping them sell it, good job, you got the sell. But if you are helping them sell their property and you know that they bought a property, this closing date. So what is the time? What is important to them? Do they know where they need to be in terms of money? Have you spoken to their mortgage broker? Do you know that they use the mortgage broker? Do you know where they stand in that situation? So, one of the tips I would say is just have that conversation and really pay attention to what they're saying. We're really good sometimes at understanding what we need to give people, what information we want to convey to them. But a lot of times they're telling us a lot of information that we need to pay attention to. So, they're stressed out because they need to, they're worried about the closing. That's something that you need to pay attention to, because yes, the money's important, but if they can't close and that they bought their property 25 years ago, they can make up that money, but they need a closing. So listing high and waiting on the market is not going to be a good idea. And that's obviously not a good idea for any time. But it's a situation where maybe the money's more important to them. Maybe they're downsizing and they're going to move in with family. And so they want the most amount of money as possible. And so they may want you to list higher, and that's perfectly fine, but they don't necessarily need a closing date that's sooner or later. We are in the industry, we're in real estate. And so one of the things that we are always concerned about is, ensuring that the property we get a firm offer. Firm offer and closing is really the big things for us. Obviously getting the most money for them is important too. But, sometimes I've seen clients give up a firm offer for $5,000 more. Right. And why? Because that's what they want. $5,000 is important to a lot of people. To us, we just see it as we don't know what the market's going to be like. We don't trust it. I'm very skeptical. It's one of those things where I'm concerned about the situation. So I'd rather go with a firm market. We're kind of used to that. But a lot of clients would rather say, I need that $5,000. And that's important to know. And so pay attention, listen to your clients, see what they're stressing out about. What are they texting you at 11 o'clock at night about? Because that is going to give you an indication, okay, why do they need to sell so quickly? And the thing is, they may not always be the most upfront either. All right. So they may not tell you. You may ask them an important question, time or money, which is more important to you? And they say, well, money is the most important thing. Cool. but then they're texting you late at night about, well, how many showings have there been? That's an indication that they might be concerned about the time. And they may not be the most upfront, because sometimes, depending on their personality, their culture, they don't talk about money often. So they don't know how to feel around you and what information to give you. So more importantly is, one of the tips I would say is really have that conversation. If you know the conversation is going to be is possible, have a conversation, time or money, but also really pay attention to what they're saying, because they will give you a lot more information if you pay attention to what they said versus what they are what they're telling you directly. Also pay attention to, this is psychology stuff, but pay attention to how they act. What are they saying? If you are using, it's been a while, so when you're on Treb, for example, if you're using Collab, I know it's not the Collab anymore, but if you are using something like that, and you can see, your clients are saying my price point is this, and they're looking at another complete different price point, right? Pay attention to what they're doing, because it will give you information. It will give you a hint on where they are going, and at the very least, you don't necessarily have to confront them with it, but also it preps you for those conversations when you have them on Friday afternoon.
So we're talking right now about having these conversations ahead and kind of planning, but today's January 11th, right? A lot of the people on this call have listings that have sat since maybe beginning of December or earlier, and it's difficult. We got to have some difficult conversations today or tomorrow or soon. Kyle, let's start with you. Any tips for having these conversations that maybe I haven't had? Maybe I haven't really been the best at checking in. I haven't set those expectations ahead of time. Do you have any tips for, I got to make today? I'm going to make today. There's over 300 people on this call, and some of them have got to make the conversation a day, a difficult one. Any tips for that?
We always have this conversation with sellers ahead of time, especially before it even hits the market, which is and actually one of the other, Eliza had actually made a good comment here. She said, you're going to have to tell these sellers that there's going to have to be a price adjustment later on if the price is too high. We all know that, right? We all know that. The question is, when do you present that information to a seller? You don't want to do it too late after 90 or 120 days of sitting on the market. You want to do it right away. So I think, look, if a property or a listing's been on the market for too long, two things. You need to really specifically let that seller know that that property needs a price adjustment. Or number two, get different staging in there, get different marketing in there, and relist. Our team had actually sold a property in Bedford Park last year. It's about to close. You guys can look it up. It's 567 Woburn. And this is an incredible story where we did something as a team that was never done in the market, which is we literally auctioned this property off in a rising interest rate market when the Bank of Canada was on their 5th rate hike. So how incredible is that? The seller wanted to exit their position here in Toronto, move south of the border, and said, you guys need to sell this property. How are you guys going to do it? We didn't do it at this price that they originally wanted to come out at. We didn't do it at this price that they wanted to come out at. And we sat down and we said, look, the only way that we can do this is by setting the price extremely low. And what did it do? It generated over 50 showings. And miraculously, in this market, 5 offers that came through registered on the property. Incredible. So that property had sold. So that's a specific, I know there was a comment in the chat that said, let's provide meat and potatoes as an example. That's a pretty meat and potatoes example of getting something done in this market that we're in today.
So you're just basically saying, looking at other options that you've got, right? Having those conversations, but looking at other options ahead of time. And again, you were kind of talking about before about being prepared. So, you obviously didn't just walk up going, well, maybe we could do this. You had a plan and you came with it, and you had some, options up your sleeve. So you were prepared. So that was really good.
Just wanted to add on that. Definitely one of the things that we as professionals have to be is prepared. But going back to it, you have after this call, if some of you haven't realized you haven't spoken to your sellers in the last 3 weeks, now it's time to do it. Is, like I said before, rip the Band-Aid off. Do it. Call them, text them right now. You have time. I'll give you a few minutes. Send a text, say, hey, we need to have a conversation. Because guess what? They probably already have this thing going on in their head. They're already brewing something in their head, and you don't want to be the person receiving the call. Because odds are, if they're calling you with worse news. They're pissed, they're annoyed, they're frustrated, they've spoken to someone who's in their family who's a realtor. These are all things that are probably going to happen if you wait longer than you should have. If you haven't set up the time that we've been discussing, it's important we do that. Yes, we're January 11th, and now we're in a situation where I haven't done that, and now I need to call someone. Do it. Call. Send a text right now and say, hey, we need to have a conversation later on, because it's important that you do it and you don't push it off. Because by the time you push it off, by the time you actually have to have that conversation, you're on the chopping block. And you may already be on the chopping block and you don't know it, right? So it's important that you just rip the Band-Aid off, be prepared. One of the things is also, you'll never always be fully prepared. So waiting to be fully knowledgeable about the entire market and knowing all the answers is never going to happen. So stop using that as an excuse, because it's not going to happen. But know enough, and then say, hey, we need to have a call about your property, because they've already know that there's something going on, especially if they haven't seen a showing in the last couple of days. In the last couple of days, they're wondering what's going on. They probably have reached out to you already multiple times saying, hey, what's going on? And you probably say, yeah, there's a showing, or I'll follow up, I'll let you know. Now is the time to give them a call, rip the Band-Aid off, and say, hey, let's have a strategic meeting about what's going on with your property. Right. The other thing is, when you're having that call, here's a very simple tip, and I try to use it more often than not, is replacing the word but with and. And I've heard it multiple times. When you use but, you negate everything you said just before. So, saying, this property is great, but, and you have all these great things to say afterwards. You just told them all this stuff, and you essentially told them that you've kind of lied, but you softened the blow. Your property is great, and we need to make some changes. Or, we've priced accordingly to the market that was there in December, and the market has continued to change. And so we need to make adjustments for that, right? When you say but, you essentially lay the blame on yourself. We changed we priced here, but we need to change it here. Saying that, well, you weren't expecting it. So saying something like that, understanding that situation, and it's something as simple. I mean, we all are aware of the legal ramifications of doing a clause that has one wrong word, right? It's something as simple as saying and/or in a clause can cause a lot of problems in your offer. It's the same thing when you're speaking to someone. Saying and versus but, it really is a good way to kind of change this, the tone of the conversation, and kind of spin it a little bit better in your favor, because it's already going to be a difficult conversation. But yeah, going back on that is really just rip the Band-Aid off. I mean, if any of you on the call right now are thinking about the difficult conversations that you probably should have had recently, send a text, send an email now, say, hey, let's book a call. And if you do it now, the reason why I say that is because if you do it now, it's out in the universe. They have to respond to you. If you say, I'm going to write it down in my book and let myself know to call them, you're not going to do it, right? There's a reason why we're on a call about procrastinating. So and I'm a very big example of this. I often send texts and send calls to let people know, hey, we need to have a conversation. Please follow up with me, because now they're waiting for something. It's my responsibility to respond to that and create that conversation. If you don't do that, you're going to push it off again. And it's very easy for us because we're busy. We're often very busy. We have other situations, not with just real estate, which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but we also have our lives to deal with. Our kids get sick, we get sick, family members are calling you about certain things. And so the car breaks down, snow happens, all of these things that we have to do. And we end up saying, well, I have to do this first. Send a text to your clients right now. Have them know that we need to book a meeting about the strategic plan for your property for 2023, and then let that go.
I love that term. I love that term. That's good. Mersadies, January 11th. You got to have a difficult conversation. Do you have any tips for having that conversation today?
Actually, I love the tip that Ken gave and just said, text your client today. It gives you your own deadline. So you text your client today, say, hey, we need to have a conversation this evening. Are you free at this time? It's giving you that deadline to gather your information, get prepared, because, you know, we've procrastinated up until now. It's the listing's been on the market for 30, 60, 90 days. Now you have a deadline. So now you're being proactive instead of reactive. You're getting your information gathered. You're preparing yourself for this horrible, horrible conversation that's going to go way better than you anticipate anyways. It gives you that deadline to actually do it. I love that. These guys have definitely nailed it.
One of the things I love doing when I have to have a really difficult conversation is pushing it into person. You know, I always find that it's often difficult over the phone or email to really understand what's going on with them. And even just meeting them at a house where they feel comfortable. Yeah, right? Like they'll feel more comfortable to share. Oh, you know, I've been feeling like this, or, you know, so that's really good. Mercedes, well,
I just want to touch on that. Definitely, if possible, in person, but don't have this conversation in text. Have it at least voice, like at least have the voice call. I do definitely prefer that. I would say have it in person as well, because it really, you can see certain things, you know, being able to understand what they say, how they say their, you know, tone of voice is very important. Again, it's really understanding and listening to what your clients is doing. And, you know, myself being a millennial, we like texting. We grew up in the world of ICQ. So this is one of the things that we do, right? But do it. And I know it feels probably much more uncomfortable for you because it becomes a, well, I'm not used to doing this. But definitely do it either in person, or at the very least do it on a call. Do not text these information to your client, because you don't know what they're doing. You don't know what they're saying. You don't know what information's coming in at the same time to contradict what you are saying via text. One of the reasons why I like text is because it gives me time to think. When you're doing it in person, you don't have a whole lot of time to think, and therefore you can see a lot of the emotion that's going on. And the other part about that is seeing the emotion is understanding that as much as we are professionals, we have to be a little bit more, we have to be less emotional with this. We have to understand the emotion, but we also have to have great tact. You know, just because we understand that the market is a certain way and we need to make a price change doesn't mean that they haven't lived in that house for the last 15 years and that they've raised their kids in it, right? It's so, yes, it is important to understand that we have to be somewhat cold in regards to understanding all of that stuff. But we also have to understand there's emotion involved, and we have to have great tact when we are speaking to clients. It's also when you send something through text, you overanalyze what you say, and then you end up making it worse for yourself. So stop doing that. Do it in person if possible, and at the very least, do it via voice or call them, or, you know, Zoom technology.
That's perfect. So Mercedes, we're all agents, and sometimes we can be very confident, or we have to put on that show of confidence. But oftentimes, deep down, we don't really have that confidence. How do you maintain confidence when you're faced with these difficult conversations?
Yeah, so I feel most confident when I have all the information possible. Of course, there's going to be questions that you sit there and think, oh, maybe I don't have that answer. Basically, at that point, don't say anything stupid. Don't say something like, oh, yeah, 100% the market's gone down 44.37%. Don't make up figures. Just say, you know what, I'll check back on that and I'll come back to you with that information. Don't lie. Don't ever lie. Don't make up numbers. Don't do that. Be prepared with the data you have to give you that confidence. And if there is something that you're not 100% certain on, circle back to it. Give yourself a minute to think about it. Maybe this is right. Maybe it isn't. Circle back, do the research, come back to them later. Getting that confidence. Oh, how do you do that? Basically being prepared. I know it's hard. I'm a procrastinator, master of procrastination over here. But once you get that ball going, get the information, confidence will just follow very simply behind.
That's perfect. So if you're watching this and you sent a text today for a difficult conversation, tell us in the chat. And then if you've had a crazy hard conversation that you've had to have in the past, throw that in the chat. Tell us all what it is. And then also, if you got a question, throw it in the Q&A so we can get to it. Kyle, how do you maintain confidence when you're faced with these difficult situations?
You know, for me, it's really about being empathetic. And you've heard on this call today, and there's 300 listeners that you've heard, it's about psychology. It's about, you know, understanding that this is, as Kenneth said, it's about someone's home. It's not a property, it's their home. If you're empathetic and you can get yourself in a client's shoes and understand what they're going through, that is so powerful to any client who's out there. Again, as Mersadies had said earlier, knowing your stuff, product knowledge is paramount in all of our lines of work. You have to go in and know exactly what you're talking about. And I think these are two of the most important things in terms of having confidence to go through our day-to-day work, which, as we all know, can be very difficult. You have ebbs and flows that go up and down and up and down, and that's just a part of being in real estate. But again, being empathetic, knowing your stuff is some of the most powerful things that you can ever have.
That's good. Ken?
And you know, knowing your stuff is great and is 100% the important part of what you do. And one of the ways you want to do that is speaking to your team, getting feedback from the people who are in the industry and saying, okay, I priced this here. Is this right? What do you think? Right? This is your team. They're there to help you. And so being able to understand, okay, well, I priced it this, here's my logic. If they say yes, you can go in with that confidence of saying, hey, that makes sense. You know, the part is you're probably going to have your client, and the reason why you don't have confidence or losing confidence in that conversation is because they're undermining the situation. And the odds are, if you are losing confidence in that conversation, you started with a little bit of doubt in your mind about the property as well, right? And it's very simple to do so. We don't know what's going on. We don't understand why. If you've gone back and you've talked to experts in your team, and you know, people who've done this for much longer than you have, I do that. I used to do that all the time. People who are new, who are older, who are veterans, you know, I ask them, what do you think about this situation? What do you think about this? Where do you think I priced well? Or what do you think you would price it at? Which is always fun that I have. Go ahead.
Ken, you're saying team, but we can also look at that as people within our brokerage, or people,
yes,
even
yes,
fellow agents, or even like, you know, you can reach out to yourself or Mersadies, right? Like you've got people around you in the industry that you can reach out to. So you're saying team, but I know what you're really meaning is anyone around you, right?
100%. And I always, like, when I refer to team, I refer to at least your brokerage. You know, I refer to, and then, you know, you have the YPN, you have other individuals in the industry who are very good at what they do. You know, reach out to any one of us and it's the same thing. We would be able to give you kind of our advice and how we would price this or how we would do these things. The important part is, and that's really exactly what I meant. And, you know, the important part is understanding that when you go into that conversation, if you have 5 individuals that have been in the industry combined 30, 40 years, and they've told you that you did exactly what they would have done, what is your client going to say that is wrong, right? Like that is undermining what you did, because top individuals have said the exact same thing about what you've done, right? And so you have to remind yourself that you are the professional in the situation. They've gotten a lot of information, but I'll be honest, you know, HGTV is not the source for truth in real estate market in situations. The news isn't necessarily the source for that situation, because the news is reported usually on a delayed situation. We know what's going on a regular basis. And if you don't know what's going on a regular basis, this is where I say, go to your brokerage, have conversations with individuals in your brokerage and say, hey, what's going on with the market? What are you seeing? This is why, you know, I may not have traded for a very long time, but I knew what was going on in the market because I had conversations with every agent that I could and say, hey, what's going on in the market? What are you seeing? Right. And that gives me confidence saying, okay, I could speak about this topic. I know what the price per square foot is in a specific area. I know what this is going on because I've had the conversation with other people, and they're going to give me proper advice or proper information because we're all realtors. Right. And so it gives us a chance to understand what's going on. And then, like we said, you know, being prepared. but also reminding yourself if you have to tell yourself before you enter that door that you are the professional, say it, right? You remind yourself that you are the professional in the situation. You need to remind yourself that there's no reason why whatever you're doing is incorrect and that your plan is incorrect, because you've gone through the process. You know all the information. You have more information than they do. And if they say they have more information, I'd question that, right? Because they have a friend who's in real estate. You've just spoken to 5 brokers, 5 salespeople who've been in the industry combined 50 years. Do they have more information than you do? And if they say no, or you obviously don't want to say that, you don't want to question them. But if you know that they're not, be confident in that. The other part about it is, I know it's hard to say at this point, but what gives you confidence is understanding that you are understanding your worth and being unafraid to lose the business. Because you don't want to be on the market with someone who's undercutting you consistently, telling you that you are wrong and that you're doing things you don't need that in your life. And I mean, it's very easy for me to say, but I'll say it out, and it's honestly the truth is that, it's okay to say, you know what, maybe this is not working for both of us, because I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm trying to help you the best as you can. But if you truly don't believe that I'm not working out for you, then we need to have that conversation, because at the end of the day, that's going to give you more confidence than anything else. Knowing all the market stats. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who just know that if you're not grateful for what I'm trying to help you with, then maybe this is not the conversation the conversation needs to be. Maybe you need to find someone else. And once you understand that, know your worth, and understand to be willing to lose your business. I'm saying lose all your business, but lose your business, but be willing to do so. You're going to have a whole lot more confidence going into that, saying, you know what, I don't need this. And it's not necessarily abuse, but you don't need that grading feeling that you're not worth what you're doing, because we all know we've put time, we put effort, we've done the research, we've gone back, but every time they come back to you and they say, well, it's not, you don't know what you're talking about. Is that worth your mental health as well? Is that something that you need to in your life? And sure, we all need a paycheck, but money will always come. But you have to be confident in yourself and understanding that it is okay to lose business every once in a while, because you know what? Your clients are going to respect you more for that, because you told them, listen, your house looks fantastic and we need to make some changes on that. And they're going to see that as personal, because this is my house. You're telling me that I don't have, you're telling me that I don't have taste. No, that's not what I'm telling you. You have different tastes. You have exciting tastes. You have eccentric tastes, but that's personal. We need to depersonalize that. How do we do that, right? And if they say, "Well, this is not what I expected," you need to start to understand the conversation of maybe we need to move on, because it's not worth your time to consistently try to make up and make someone believe that you're worth something when you truly know that you're not, and you know that they're not going to believe that.
That's great. So we're going to start with Kyle, and we're going to go to Mersadies here. We've got a really good question in the chat, or sorry, actually in the Q&A. It's from Jason. How do you deal with a difficult client who determines a price based on, we've all had this, their gut feeling, after you've numerously presented comparable data to them, where you've actually shown them real data that's legit and it's not just whoosh. And unfortunately, Jason points out that Mercedes won't work in this situation. So let's start with Kyle, and we're going to switch over to Mersadies. How do you kind of combat that?
Unfortunately, sometimes you have to just sort of go through the wash of having it sit on the market and do it. In this market that we're in right now, it's extremely, extremely useful to be the second agent on a deal. Sometimes you don't always get that opportunity, but the market will determine in the first couple of weeks what kind of activity is happening on this listing. And we report that data and that feedback to this client. If XYZ seller at 123 Main Street is saying my property's worth 4 million whenever market value is at 3.2, they're totally out of touch with reality. And it's just, sometimes you just have to go through the experience of having it sit on the market with no showings, no offers, and eventually beat that price down and have them realize that, hey, it's not worth that price.
Mercedes?
Basically the exact same answer I was about to give. I currently have a listing right now, and we are doing we'll play it your way. We'll do it your way for a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, depending on how impatient I get personally. So we're gonna keep it on the market. We're gonna not get the showings. We're not gonna get the traffic. And then it's my turn to do it my way, because I'm the professional. I know what I'm doing. So basically exactly what Kyle had said, let them price it at whatever they want. Go for it. It's better if you're the second agent. You don't want to be the first agent doing this, but if you have to be, do it your way, do it the client's way, and then explain, okay, we'll try it. My way's coming next in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, nothing more than really a month. You don't really want to wait more than a month.
Has anyone here ever told the seller to also interview someone else, where you're the only one invited?
Absolutely. Oh yes.
Yeah, we've done it all the time.
Yeah. Sometimes it's helpful. If you know you're confident, right? You've got that relationship and it's good. Say, yeah, sure. If they just don't believe you. Ken, do you have any thoughts to add?
No, I just want to kind of repeat everyone, but definitely be communicative of that. Make sure you let them know that that's what you're planning on doing. We all understand that the first week, probably 30 days, is when you're going to see the most amount of viewings on a property, right? And so say, sure, you want to put this property up at this price. Against all of my advice, you say this is what you want because you have a gut feeling. We will go your way, and this time you have to say but if we go your way, we're gonna go through this conversation every week of how many showings you're seeing. If we don't get an offer within the first 2 to 3 weeks, we're gonna go my way. Right? We're gonna put it in the contract that we're gonna go my way, and you can put it in paper. Right? Put in your Schedule B on your listing agreement. This gives you a chance to really show them that this is what you're doing is what you're going to is what you're doing is professional, right? And yes, sometimes they're just adamant. They know better because they looked up in the sky and someone told them the price. Great, that's perfectly fine. You have to have that conversation with them, saying in the next week or two, we're gonna have every week we're gonna have a conversation of what's going on, and in the next 3 weeks, if your property doesn't sell, we're going to have that conversation of listing it my way. And are you okay with that? Right? If they're saying, well, yes, I mean, again, they could say yes, and then 3 weeks come by and they don't want to do it. Different situation. You have to have that conversation of maybe you don't want to work with someone who's going to blatantly lie to you, or they're going to at least prepare for that situation where it's not going to be a problem. The other thing is you are prepping yourself in that situation to learn from them. Right? You're prepping them to say, okay, well, I'm learning from this situation. This is how I'm going to go forward next time this happens. Because this is not the first time someone's going to have a gut feeling. It's not going to be the last. So when you deal with this, at the very least, every situation that you learn from, you may lose business, you may never get a deal, you may never get paid on some of these situations. At the very least, you need to learn from that situation. What did you learn from a situation? The client fires you, or if you fire a client, what did you learn from that situation? And if you learned something from it, it may be an expensive tuition because you didn't get X amount of commission out of it, but at least you got something out of it, and then that's worth it at the end of the day.
Perfect. So Mercedes, we've all touched now, I think all of us have mentioned this weekly kind of check-in, this weekly thing with our sellers. What's your preferred method to do it with your clients? Do you prefer to email, call them? What's your preferred way to kind of contact them?
I'm also a millennial, so I'm ICQ Pro, MSN Messenger. So my preferred is always send a text and try to have a phone conversation later in the day. People are busy, so you don't always get that opportunity to sit down and have a one-on-one, person-to-person conversation. So maybe it's a Monday, I say, hey, we should have a chat this evening. What's your availability like? Can I pop by in person? No? Okay, let's have a quick 5-minute conversation over the phone. If it's one of these easy market update type things. 5 minutes.
Perfect.
If one of these difficult conversations, maybe it's a little bit longer.
Kyle?
I'm super old school. I'm, if I see a text and it's this long and it's a paragraph, I'm calling someone right away. I mean, I prefer to call. My phone's been ringing off the hook since, being on the chat today, but I'm super old school. I like to be in person, face to face, and I love to call people. So that's my method.
Perfect. And Ken?
I would say go towards two things. Go towards either what you think you would want to have that difficult conversation if it happens one day. So if you know that you want to have a difficult conversation in 3 weeks and it might happen that way, have the in-person every week, because then you know that it's not going to be, hey, by the way, can I stop by? Because again, you're creating that tension of, oh, why do you want to come by now? The other part about it is do something that you don't like doing, right? If you're uncomfortable talking to people in person, go in person. If you don't like texting, learn to text. It's really something that you can learn from yourself as well. If your client doesn't care, choose something that you can learn from. The other part about it is also ask your client, see what they feel comfortable with. Because the other part about it is depending on the demographic of your client, they may love text, or they may prefer in person, or one or the other. If they don't know which one it is, try to go towards what you're going to have that difficult conversation with, and that way you kind of plan it ahead. Like if your property's listed 20% over what the last property sold for, you're probably going to have that difficult conversation in 3 weeks. So have a meeting in person every week, kind of deal. But if not, just do something that you're uncomfortable with, because then at least you learn from that situation as well.
Perfect. Kyle, really quickly, one of the questions is, what's the address of the property that you mentioned?
567 Woburn Ave. It's in Bedford Park. It's at Avenue in Lawrence.
Perfect. And if you guys missed something, feel free to reach out to any of the people on the call today after the fact. Shoot them a little DM. Maybe call Kyle. He likes the phone, right? Reach out to anyone here. They're always willing to help out and answer any questions. Kyle, do you have any solutions or any kind of, do you treat properties that are, let's say, over the $2 million mark any different? Are you treating the clients or the properties? Are you handling those any differently than you would maybe like I don't know, you're in Toronto, so like an $800,000 studio? Like, do you treat a $2 million property differently, or no? Or what? Can you walk through it?
Yeah, our tone of voice is exactly the same. The only variable that changes is really the gifts at the end of the year during Christmas time. But, people appreciate that. Yes, we really enjoy a $12 million listing in Forest Hill or Lawrence Park and everything in between, but we treat that high-end property the exact same way as we would with a first-time home buyer. We're dedicated, we're specific, we're hand-holding when we need to be, and we're very helpful, right? So that's the power and the benefit of having a team, right? Like our team is of 10 people now, which is impressive, and we help people in so many different ways. And if one person can't help a client, we bring somebody else in. And I mean, look, there's over 200 people on the call now. If anyone has any questions or needs help on properties, or as I said, determining a listing price on a questionable listing in Central Toronto, reach out to myself, reach out to Adam Weiner. We'd be happy to help you guys at any time.
Perfect. Ken, Mercedes, do you have any tips about, maybe a higher price property, or if you treat it any differently? I think you guys will probably answer the same way, but any specific meat and potato tips?
I would say, you're going to have a little bit more patience. You're going to need to let your clients know, and they probably know this as well. Remember, Toronto, $2 million is not necessarily, high end, not necessarily high end, but situations where you're dealing with a client who has $17 million property, they know that they're going to be on the market for a certain time. Also, again, I like to advocate for this. Reach out to your brokerage, to other people in the industry. Really high-end properties tend to go because they know someone knows someone in a higher bracket, right? That's how properties like these sell. And so being able to have the conversation of like, hey, I have a property going on, network, have the conversations with all these people, because you never know when someone's going to actually bring a buyer in.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing here. We treat every client the same. We're not going to look at the end number and say, oh, we're going to make a lot of money on this guy. Let's really give them the 5-star treatment. Treat every client 5-star, treat them all with dignity, respect. We do the staging for every home. We do the photography for every home. We don't have packages based on what we're going to make at the end of the day. It's, you're listing for 300,000, you're getting the same treatment somebody listing for 15 million will get. So we definitely, we're definitely fair that way. And I think it's really important to treat each person that way. Who knows, maybe that $300,000 listing has a friend who, you know, it needs to sell their huge home. We want to have that good experience and say, hey, you know, Mercedes treated me really fairly. We're really happy with her service, and it'll translate into other business. 90% of the business I do personally, I can't speak to the other panelists, but I'm sure it's the same, is word of mouth and referral. So we want to make sure that everybody's treated happy, fair, 5-star.
Okay, so I got one last question and then we'll try and wrap this up so we keep everyone's time. Deanna had a question in the chat. This is a changing market that we're in, and we're trying to navigate the future often. Sales are down, prices a challenge with few recent comps. How do you handle that? How do you, when you're trying to move forward with a client, how do you handle that? Mercedes, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, yeah. So I can't speak to each market, but the market that I'm currently in is very similar to our 2018, 2019 market. So if I'm having a hard time pulling comps, I'm going back to years that are similar to the market now. So if, say, and again, I'm quoting random numbers, don't quote me on these. Say my personal market has dropped by 30%. I'm going to go back to a year where these prices are similar, where it was 30% lower. And I'm going to say, look, we're not in 2022 anymore. We're not in this magical real estate world where everything is worth millions and millions of dollars. Let's look back to something a little bit more realistic. Forget these crazy years that recently happened and look at some real data that shows what the property is truly worth.
Kyle?
We're hyper-focused in the market. So there's actually a gentleman in the group. His name's Ryan Mohan. Good to see you, my friend. We did a deal on 30 Mason, and the benefit, I'll give you an example. Like if there's a lack of comps, as you said earlier, you got to start going into exclusives, right? And the benefit of working with anybody who's hyper-focused in the market, Adam, for example, can tell you what properties had sold for in Bedford Park that were totally off market 5 years ago, a year ago, 6 months ago. So that can influence the price of a property drastically than what public information can. So that non-public information really helps so much in terms of establishing a good listing price to get a property actually sold.
Ken, what's some tips you got?
Instead of sold, look at what's listed, what's been on the market for 90 days. That's going to be an indicator like, well, okay, well, that price is not working. Right. It's a great way to at least understand where the market is. And sometimes the clients don't understand that, right? They see a property, it's been on the market for 30 days, but they haven't seen that it's been canceled and relisted for the last 6 months, right? So know what's listed, go see them, go. I mean, I've had individuals, people have gone with their clients to see them, know the difference. But if you don't have a sold price, at the very least, know what the lists are, and to understanding and going and seeing those properties, seeing them compared to yours. Because if you know the properties in the area are all listed at 1.1 or 400,000, and they're not selling for the last 30, 40, 50 days, and they're very similar to yours, well, you know that your property is not worth 400,000, right? And so you need to understand where to go from there. And it's at least a starting point of that conversation, because there isn't that many comparables, at least sold comparables.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to wrap this up with one simple question. Give me your best tip to have a difficult conversation. You've got like a 10, 15, 30-second thing. Answer. Ken, you're first.
Do it.
Kyle,
go
then
do
Mercedes.
It. Go do it. Do it. Doesn't matter what it is. Go do it right now.
Kyle?
Be prepared.
Mercedes?
Wine. No, I'm joking. Go do it right now and be prepared. You guys have nailed this. That's the tip. Know your stuff and get it done.
Awesome. So the notes for everybody. In the chat, there's a link for if you want to join one of the OREA committees. You can reach out to anyone that's part of the committee or anyone on this call about their experiences, and if you think you might be a good fit. We're always looking for some great people across Ontario to be a part of it. So check that out. Please volunteer. There's so much value that we all get from this and being a part of this group. I highly suggest everyone to try and to reach out. And this is on a provincial level. You can also do your local one as well. YPN awards are opening this Friday, and the deadline will be February 17th. Again, please, if you think you might have you've done something positive in your community, please reach out and take a look at that. The Facebook group, join the Facebook group if you're not. And then again, go add these 3 on Instagram. Go give them a follow, take a screenshot, shoot it up there. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you February 8th, I believe it is. We'll have our next panel. We look forward to it. Watch your emails. And thanks again, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys. Take care.